Hello, everyone, and welcome to Keeping It Real with Amaryllis. Today, in honor of Women's History Month, I want to talk about women in policing. So, currently, women make up about 12% of law enforcement officers and 3% of leadership in law enforcement. And I definitely do think that this is a disparity and it undermines public safety because women are known to de escalate a lot of situations more than males do. And they also are known to use less use of force, and they are mentioned in less lawsuits. And the public states that they normally tend to look at women officers as more honest and they're have more compassion, so they're more relatable to people. And there's this thing called the 30-30 Initiative, which is basically a pledge that they're asking for law enforcement agencies to take, stating that by the year 2030, they're committed to recruiting and having 30% women in their agency. So I'm gonna put the link in the next page so you guys can look into it. It's awesome information. If you're interested in learning more about it, I definitely recommend going to that website. There's many reasons why women leave law enforcement or why they don't want to come to law enforcement. And a lot of that is the negative culture towards women in law enforcement. And though many people don't want to admit that there's a culture that pretty much sets women up for failure from the get-go, but there definitely is. And something as simple as the uniform. Many agencies have just unisex uniforms and they expect women to fit the same uniform that a man does. And something as simple as even the vest. That is something that is a basic need to be able to do the job. They need to be able to fit the uniform, but they don't make the accommodations for women. Childbirth. When I found out that I was pregnant, that very same day they took me off of the road and they put me on light duty in the office. That is illegal. That goes against the Federal Pregnancy Discrimination Act, and you cannot make a female leave her job and put her on light duty just because she is pregnant. Just because she gets pregnant does not mean that she cannot do the job. And it has to be her decision to get off of patrol and be placed on light duty. But they can't force her to, because there's nothing to say that she can't do the job compared to another person who may be obese, out of shape, on high blood pressure or something. They can't. If they can't make that person get off of the road because they can't physically do the job, then why would they make a pregnant female get off of the road? It has to come from her. And breastfeeding, for example, when I was breastfeeding my son 13 years ago, I had to pump from a storage closet because there was nowhere for me to pump. And I had to store my milk in a shared kitchen fridge, which it was like a running joke, but we worked through it. However, these are very simple fixes. For example, these pods that you may have seen in many places, they have them at the airport. They're not super expensive, but basically it's a pod. It can be placed outside or it can be placed inside, and it's a place where mothers who are breastfeeding can go. However, because they're not thinking about it, not enough people have complained, or maybe nobody has sued the agency, they're thinking it's not important, but it is, because if you have females that work in an agency, and even though it may not be all females on patrol, but what about the women that are working in the office as well, all the civilian employees? They don't have a place to go breastfeed either. So it's definitely a lot of discrimination when it comes to women in general, whether sworn or non-sworn in law enforcement, and there's many issues that need to be addressed. And one of the things that, it's a male-driven career field, so automatically women are thought of as weak. And though physically women may be weaker genetically, however, that does not mean, well, most women, because I know some girls that can beat some deputies' butts, but there is nothing that states that mentally they can't do the job. And you don't have to be the strongest to be able to do the job, because I know there's some weak men too. So what's to say that a woman can't do the job just because they're not going to be physically as strong as a man? There's nothing. There's certain things that a man can bring to the table, and there's certain things that a woman can bring to the table as far as, things in law enforcement. And that's what brings that balance. And that's why we don't have that balance. And oftentimes it's very ego driven, and many women just either overcompensate because they're trying too hard to be like a man and they're trying too hard to be masculine. And then those that are just being more emotional, they tend to get criticized. So there's definitely many things that need to be addressed, but until someone's going in and making that a priority, it's not going to change. And it's extremely difficult to try and get men to understand what women go through in law enforcement. I say it's kind of like racism. So it's very difficult to get somebody who's never gone through it to truly understand how it feels, because if they've never experienced it for themselves, then they're truly not going to understand. And for example, one recent incident that I filed a grievance within the agency, and I ended up having a meeting with Marcos Lopez. And in this meeting, he kept talking about women in policing, and he was saying how he was trying to change the culture, and that's why he started this female academy. And he was saying how he understands because his wife used to be a deputy, and he was trying to make it better. So maybe the intention was there, but because he doesn't understand, and he didn't even go to any females to ask, what works or what changes need to be made, he's not changing the culture. What he's doing is that he's bringing more females in, and he's trying to recruit more females, but they're all going into the same culture because he's not changing the culture. He's just trying to change the amount of females that we bring into the agency. But these females are not going to stay, and we're not going to be able to retain them if the culture does not change. And as I'm sitting there talking to him, and he's asking questions, and he keeps talking about women in policing and in law enforcement, I came to find out that he didn't even read my grievance. So he's having a whole meeting with me about my grievance, and he just assumed that my grievance had to do with being a female in law enforcement, and it had nothing to do with it. So in the middle of the meeting, because he kept talking about something that has nothing to do with my complaint, I asked him, I said, hey, so did you read my grievance? And he said, no. He said that he runs an agency of X amount of employees and he didn't have the time. And I'm thinking, wow, you did not have not even 20 minutes to read a grievance for an employee that's been there with you for so many years. And that's what it is. They don't care. They don't care to learn. They don't care to find out how they can fix it. So he already went in there thinking that I'm just here complaining about being a female, and my grievance had absolutely nothing to do with that. And we even spoke about, his academy, and I told him that he's not changing a culture. What he's doing is he's bringing more women in, but the culture is staying the same. And he told me, well, I can't change a culture. He says that would be like someone who is of a certain religion, and I come here, I can't change how they think. And I said, that's not right. I said, you can definitely change a culture. I said, for example, if I was a racist and I came to work and I behaved like a racist and there was consequences, it's not going to change the fact that I'm racist. But what it's going to change is the fact that when I come to work, I know if I behave like a racist, there's going to be consequences, and it has to be the same. So that's how you change a culture. But when you stay in this little box and you think that, bringing more females in is going to fix it, but you're not changing the culture, that's not really helping. And the female academy that he started was not a success. They started out with, I think, like 19 women, and it was very difficult even to get those 19 women. But they also brought down the standard. So they allowed the women to go in without passing a certain test that is required. So that already started to have people talk, and they were already, for women who are discriminated against, now you have the deputies on the road saying, oh, they couldn't even pass the PAT test. So it's not really helpful. You're actually making the culture worse, because now when those women pass and come to work, they're already being spoken about and thought less of. And right now, I think they have about 7 women in the academy out of 19, and there's still a couple months left. So chances are that those 7 stay and graduate are very slim. So it was not a success. And I think a part of that is because he's thinking like a man. And that's another issue. We hire women and we expect them to. To all the women in law enforcement, I see you, I appreciate you. I know that sometimes you gotta work 3 times as hard to get the same respect as men. However, stay in the fight. Don't stay complacent just because you're scared to stir the pot. The only way that we're gonna break barriers is by us being the change, by us helping change those policies, by speaking out. So thank you for all that you do. I appreciate you. I know a lot of people do, and be the change.